Sure. We'll get started now. We have everybody who said they could and would be here are here on the committee. Councillor Hutchison has sent his regrets. He's off on a well-earned vacation. But we do have quorum of the committee, so we'll get started. I'll just mention to the gallery that politics is a non-contact sport. I just want you to remember that. Thank you very much. So we'll begin. I'll call the meeting to order, and I'm looking for a mover and a shaker for the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Bohm, Councillor Osonic. All those in favor? Carried. And confirmation of minutes. I believe we've received the minutes electronically. Thank you. Councillor Osonic moves. Councillor McLaren seconds. All those in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll go on to delegations. And Michael Parker, Kingston Panthers Rugby Football Club, will speak to the committee regarding the Kingston Panthers RFC Home Park project. So the floor is yours, and I believe you're all queued up, ready to go.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, city staff, thank you very much for the opportunity for us to address you. We brought just a small sampling of the diversity that we have here within the club, and we're very happy and proud to be able to offer you a small introduction or a refreshed introduction to our home park project. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to appear before a committee today. See if this works. Yes, it does. All right, so as I've said, the opportunity today that you've offered us so kindly, we'd like to use that as a bit of a reminder of the presentation that was conducted last fall. And those notes in the presentation from last fall are inside the information package that you should have before you there. As well, we have the opportunity to update you with regard to the results of the meeting that we had with Commissioner of Community Services, Ms. Hurdle, just 2 weeks ago, and a very positive meeting which we believe will take steps towards the realization of what has been a dream for quite some time. More importantly than this refresher is the opportunity for you to ask us questions. There are, I'm sure, things that we've engaged with many of you. There are things that may be of concern or things that you would like clarified in your own mind, and this is a great opportunity for us to do so. And I certainly don't want to spend 5 minutes trying to delve into every possible answer to every one of your possible questions. I'd rather hear from you what concerns you as well. I just want to remind you up front that what we're talking about here is not a rugby-only facility, but rather a rugby-first facility, and that within the city, there is no actual for-purpose rugby pitches, and that all other rectangular sports can fit within the confines of a rugby pitch, and to the standard of and the safety of the surface that we require exceeds that of all the other sports that you could possibly think of, whether it's gridiron football, lacrosse, soccer, or just about anything else that you can think of. The last thing that I would remind you of up front is that we're not coming to you and asking you for a huge injection of city resources. What we're asking for you and from you is a partnership where we bring some skills, some fundraising ability, some approaches which we alone, given our expertise and the expertise of some of the people around the room and our connections with the community, are able to do as a not-for-profit that simply are not going to be available to you as a city. And people aren't going to invest some of those things into the city that they will invest into the club, whereas we can do this for the mutual benefit of every citizen of Kingston. So in answer to the most important question, how are things going? The answer is they're going pretty darn well. as I've said, we're more than happy to answer any of the questions. I'll focus down onto the meeting that we had with the Commissioner for Community Services. We talked about one of the key issues, which is the ownership of the land. We want to make sure that it's clear to you, to the committee, and to the council that we have no desire to own property per se. What we want is we want a partnership with the city for which we offer a number of things, and that includes caretaking of it and investment through a long-term lease into some facilities that'll be of benefit to all the citizens of Kingston. But in particular, if we build it, we would like to take advantage of it. We also addressed an issue, the perceived issue of displacement of other sports. And that's an issue that I'm more than happy to delve into when it comes time for questions. But certainly it's a complex one, but I believe that there's a perception that needs to be allayed or concerns that need to be allayed as we, in fact, would expand the utility of existing sports facilities rather than simply displace other sports. Last but not least, Ms. Hurdle assured us that we would have a report, or that she would present a report to council, which would delve into all the issues that city staff need to work through in consultation with us, and we're more than happy to answer any of those questions. It's clearly in our interest to provide them in a very timely and open fashion. But we have an agreement from her that she will provide that to us by the end of May or early June. And it is our sincere hope that we'll be able to bring this issue to council for a decision this summer, such that we can start our work with an agreement in hand from council. We can then start approaching our partners and so on to start investing in what is a great recreational facility for the city. We also want to assure you that not only are we part of the community, but we're supportive of the rest of the community. Their rugby, as you may have gathered, particularly after this last summer's excellent performance by our Olympic women, winning and doing so well in Rio. The opportunity to play rugby is an opportunity that's offered to children from the age of 6 to older people, to the age, I have to be respectful of some of the people in the room, to the age of 66. I have constituents just like you. They're not quite as demanding, so I can get away with a bit more. And of both genders, all races, there is no discrimination in rugby. Your performance is what speaks for itself. What I would say to you is that we've made pretty deep efforts within our own fundraising to ensure that those who are less advantaged have access to our sport. And in fact, in many ways, the locus of our sport remains in and around some of the more disadvantaged areas here in Kingston. And we do a lot with some of the communities, with some of the schools in those areas to ensure that those children have access to sport. So here's some of the concrete things that we've done over our last 50 years in this community. And I do thank you for declaring the 9th of July as the Kingston Panthers Rugby Football Club Day. But here are just a few of those things. I don't want to delve into them too quickly in the 5 minutes that I do have. I will say that virtually every coach and every referee that supports the high school programs here in Kingston, and even most of the ones that support the post-secondary education institutions, which have such fine rugby programs, has a connection to our club, either through our club or starting in our club at some point in their time. Last but not least, I'll just use this opportunity to advertise that next week we'll be having our annual Head Smart, Head Safe Sports Concussion Awareness Training, which is open to all sports. And we know that all sports face the issue of concussions, and it's a timely and important topic for us to broach. Last but not least, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Ms. Hurdle and our club discussed the potential to reach an agreement to allow some use of some of the city facilities through the Boys and Girls Club with the joint venture that we are involved in for summer camps at a reduced fee in accordance with the existing existing city regulations. So what I'll leave you with is this. First off, I'm more than happy to get into greater depth on any of the topics that I've started, or even the ones that I haven't. I want to assure you that we, as your rugby club, the only rugby club in the area, continue to represent you as a city, not only here in Eastern Ontario as the biggest rugby club in Eastern Ontario, all the way out to Quebec City, out to Toronto, to Fletcher's Fields, and so on. But yesterday, one of our players introduced at a senior Irish post-secondary final cup match, he steps onto the pitch and he's announced as a Kingston Panthers player. And it doesn't get better than that in terms of pride for our club. It's a great opportunity for us to spread the great sport of rugby and our players around not only Canada, but the world.
Thank you very much. That was being a rugby fan, I think that was a 9-minute, 5-minute presentation. But thank you very much. We are open for questions.
I was waiting for the yellow card, sir. I was waiting for the yellow card.
Yes, Councillor Bone.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Parker. And as you know, I'm a big supporter of this. I really am and excited about the partnership opportunities and kind of seeing more of these things going forward and how this could possibly work and leveraging obviously the different abilities that each party brings to the tables. And so essentially it's a win-win-win in the end. So I guess I was just curious if you could elaborate on the increase to public access that you guys are proposing for Caton's Park and perhaps some of the concerns from maybe some of the other sports users. And you mentioned earlier that basically rugby would have the largest pitch and the greatest sort of requirements, therefore everything else could fit within that home if we were to basically have something like this.
So at the most basic point, that it has to be clear, the rugby size of a regulation rugby pitch is greater than any other pitch. Therefore, if we were to expand, to build, and to improve upon the current pitches, including eventually as we acquire, as we build, as we move our financial plan forward, moving into artificial pitches and so on, that access to that turf would be available to anybody. Our request would be if we put our efforts into it, into fundraising for it, into potentially maintaining it, that we have the opportunity of a right of first refusal and a long-term assurance that we would have access to it. I think that's only fair for anybody who would ask that question. In terms of the facility itself, our proposal does not decrease access. In fact, it doesn't change the total number of rectangular pitches in this fine city. What it does do is deepens and ensures greater access to pitches by, first off, using an underutilized pitch in an underutilized area. As many of you who've driven by that area as I do on my way home will know that pitch, though it has been booked, is quite often underutilized. By doing this, we expect to increase the utilization of the actual pitch itself. And part of that will be facilitated through a service level agreement with the city that could even, exclusively book to another sport, a weekend or two in the summers, where we book all of our fixtures, all of our matches our way. And that would then give them access to the facilities that we've spent our hard work, sweat, and treasure building. So really what I see this isn't expanding or contracting the number of pitches. Physically, the same number of pitches will exist. Rather, it is deepening and enhancing the quality of the sports facilities that are here at no cost to the city.
So just to follow up, just to make sure I understand that. So basically the proposal is to enhance the already existing facilities and essentially put some investment and build a partnership there. So basically it's a win-win.
Absolutely, Councillor Bowman, that's how we see it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren and then Councillor Holland.
Thank you. So as I understand, you're not actually looking for any financial contribution from the city. Could you just confirm that? And if that's true, can you tell us, is there any way that the city can support you outside of financial considerations?
Yes, sir, absolutely, and that's an excellent question. You're here on behalf of the citizens of Kingston, and you want assurance that the citizens of Kingston are not disproportionately benefiting any one group or another simply because we've asked and somebody did not. The reality, I want to be emphatic in that we have no request from the City of Kingston for any financial investment in this. What we would ask from the City of Kingston is the necessary assurance that we would have long-term access to this plot of land such that we could assure our investors that where their money goes, the benefit that they seek to have will accrue. In other words, we want to have that right of first refusal, the opportunity to use our abilities to fundraise, to maintain, to put in our sweat equity into that area with the assurance that we'll have it for some time. But we have no request from the city for funding. We would, of course, ask for your support, your moral support, when it comes to things like getting grants from the provincial or federal government or other supporting agencies. And we believe that a number of benefits, broader benefits, will accrue to the city beyond just enhancing the activity of your youth and so on, but also in achieving some sport tourism benefits as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So a couple of questions. I guess you've sort of just led into this one. The presentation, the report gives some good information on potential economic benefits to the city in regards to tourism, and one of the main focuses, of course, through KEDCO with sports tourism. I'm getting the sense that you understand that beyond economic development, that there's a community development component to developing this area and enhancing the quality of the field and bringing more people out to use it. And in fact, if you can get this many people to a committee meeting, I'm sure that field will be packed all the time. But I guess if you could just give me some of your thoughts on community development, and in particular in that area of the city where the North Kingstown Community Working Group has been working to try to sort of develop infrastructure and make it with the thoughts of course, longer term economic growth and all of that, but just as far as the community aspect, how this facility would evolve in your mind.
Absolutely. So in the first place, I think the most important thing that we'll bring is increased activity into the city and into that particular place. And that will in some way push some of, and frankly, I've been sitting watching that piece of ground for about 6 months now. My mechanic's right across the way, so whenever my car breaks down, I'm there. It is underutilized. It is essentially used as an off-leash dog park. There are aspects of that we would want to curb, clearly. And there are other people who use it as a long-term. There are homeless people that are using it and others. The opportunity that we see isn't so much to displace that, but rather to bring up and put more light and focus and more activity into that area. And we believe that will in itself provide a certain degree of economic development in the area. It will have spin-offs locally and so on. In addition to that, you have two schools who are not far away, both of which are underserved for the fields that they have. There are, I believe, 60 young women practicing. So Jocelyn Poirier just came from Regiopolis. How many girls did you have out tonight? 40, and you have 60 on your list or 50 on your list? Okay, so that's simply just the girls. There's also a boys' side on top of that, two boys' sides on top of that, and they are limited to a single field. We see this as being developed in conjunction with both of the school boards, and we have letters of support and indications of support every time we talk to a school board, where we start saying, listen, we can't use it during the school day. These are the same athletes that we hope to bring into our program. This is a win-win situation in this case as well. So that's how we see it. The next bit is the spin-off as people, move downtown and start to stay at hotels, start to stay and use food and beverage establishments and so on. Is there anything, Mike, you want to add to that?
Part of your question was about community development. So in the first instance, Dave said we want to put a lot of new activity into a very underutilized park and an underutilized, underenhanced part of the city. In the first instance, even if we don't get to synthetic turfs right away, the natural pitches will get a lot more activity in the art. For our sport and the other sports that we imagine, we use that space in the first instance as we. Once we get the synthetic turf, we'll go from just playing summer sports or sports in the summer, if you will, into what you call shoulder seasons. And if we get enough shovels, then we'll be playing it in winter as well. Then we look at another important part of the whole sort of package that we have, and that's the field house. And the field house is not just the change rooms and the showers.
That's a good point.
Since every second weekend in the summer, we're hosting clubs from various places. That field house, as we've seen in all the other rugby parks around the province, becomes a community center used by sport organizations, community organizations, where they may not have another place to go. And again, within the SLAs that we've seen in other parks, some of the organizations will get access to that facility for free, and others will be charged an affordable rate. So there's the components, I think, to answer your question about community development. Does that help?
And certainly, Mike brings up an excellent point with regard to the fieldhouse facility, and it's picture, if you will, lunchtime yoga. No, that's exactly the kind of thing that we absolutely do want, that kind of thing there, because in part we can have a piece of our revenue generation comes from that. So we will be there like hawks trying to make this happen in a way and with energy that simply city staff cannot afford. Ma'am.
Thank you. Councillor Sonic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I also had a question about sports tourism, but that was just asked by Councillor Holland. My second question just goes back to the presentation that we did see in the fall when you were here. So right now, you'd be okay with the natural grass that's on the field right now, and then a longer term would be to go to synthetic turf, and that's where you would hope that the city could help write the grants for the Trillium grants, for instance. Like, is that where you kind of envision the money to come from for a synthetic turf?
So there is a multi-source financial plan, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike in just a second to address that. But the way that we see approaching this is in distinct phases, where we gather up the resources first, have them locked in, and then proceed to that phase. That may take more, or it may take less time than we plan, but what we want to do is have that. And we've been asked a very good question by one of the other councillors, which is what happens if you only get half of what you want in terms of those resources? Well, the fact is that we can play on it as it is right now, and with with some kind of agreement with the city, where we take on some aspects of that, including changing that particular park to achieve what we need to achieve. So, for instance, we could move the fences, establish netting so that we have safe places for the balls to go, work to establish a safer place to park. We're concerned right now that even as it is used, there's too much foot traffic on that particular street, on Bagot Street. Those are the kind of things that we would see. But I am going to turn it over to Mike to talk about the financial plan.
A few good questions in there, so I hope Councillor knows. The first thing is, if I may, just to clarify about the natural grass. We're happy to start there, and as Dave suggested, that's essentially the $0 entry point. One of the key things here is that the fields as they
Great. Thank you very much. And you were able to weave in the answers to all of my questions as well. So I appreciate that. I know what I will ask, what kind of ideal time frame, if you were able to launch it with $0, but launch it now, what do you see in 5 years? What would you see in 10 years? What kind of value added would come to that playing field?
That's a great question, thank you. So the $0 HB is, as Dave suggested, we moved the fences so that we can establish full-sided rugby pitches. So then we started to maintain those fields and we generate the normal sort of field rental facility off of that. In 5 years, we would hope to have 2 high-quality pitches, hopefully transition to synthetic or even natural grass. Definitely have the field house, because the field house becomes a community center. It also becomes the hub, if you will, for generating some sport tourism, more athletic events, community events outside of the summer school. So I think that answers at least part of the question.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that your next steps are through the recreation, the commissioner and the
Right.
recreations department moving ahead with this proposal. Any concept of timeline on that?
So what's extremely important for us is that Ms. Hurdle has a report due to the council, not due to the council, a report that she believes that she can have done as early as late May, but possibly into early June. And that's what, as a result of our meeting last week, we were very heartened to hear that. That, in turn, we believe should generate or should allow us to trigger a vote in council, the full discussion of this particular issue, and then in turn, a vote which allows us in principle or gives us the assurance that we can have, not own, but have a long-term lease of this particular piece of property. Because they're not investors, but our donators, our plan revolves around the long-term assurance of having access to that. We simply can't convince somebody, for instance, we have international quality rugby posts. To buy them, they're worth between $30,000 and $40,000. We have those right now. They sit in a gravel pit by the good graces of a local construction contractor, a large construction contractor. We would want to install those into our rugby pitch. So we're bringing these things to it. But we don't want to install them and have the city simply kick us off next year. So what we want is we want to achieve that 99-year lease for $1, and then we turn around and we start working on that plan. Part of that is we don't get a 99-year lease without an SLA. You are not going to give us something for nothing. So part of this is the SLA has to be developed, and that can be as a result of a vote within council, we believe.
If I may just add to that, I think the question about timing is, if we're able to achieve an agreement with the city this summer, then we start operating the new Cadence Park in 2018, with the possibility of running not just our regular club plus league matches plus other sports in there, but our first sport tourism event. But we need that commitment this summer in order to start doing that. Take a side note to say that Brandon Pickard from Tourism Kingston, one of our partners for the last 15 years, not him personally, but and then if we have your commitment this summer, then we're also starting to plan for a larger event with one of the school boards in 2019.
Thank you very much. And I will say, just on a personal note, you have me totally sold right up to the 99-year moment. So we'll discuss that in future. So thank you very much. Yes.
I was just wondering if you or Mr. Parker could possibly just maybe mention a few other communities that have come up, whether locally or even in other countries where municipalities or their equivalent have come up with certain partnerships like this. I guess how they're going, and does this seem to be a trend where it's building? Because one of the things we often heard when we were campaigning is, why does the city duplicate the services of the school board, and why don't governments work better together or partner? So I mean, you'll see 3 pitches, and one is being used in the morning, one's being used during the school hours, and then the city one's being used at night. And it's, if you could combine all those, you're now having cost savings and benefits. And then if you could also quickly comment on essentially how the ownership, although it would reside with the city, having a team have its own pitch would also likely lead to that field being maintained better. And
Right, so I'll take the last piece and then I'm gonna hand over the first piece to Mike. So we have been using pitches in the city for 50 years. We have had, in some cases, very positive sweetheart deals with schools that recognize, particularly those that recognize the social benefit that the club has provided. There has been a recognition, and that in turn has resulted in an investment by our club in terms of sweat equity, bringing in topsoil, ensuring that those pitches are returned to as good or better state than they would be before. If we had assurances, it's like anything else, it's the community garden approach. If someone has the opportunity to feel like they have ownership of it, they treat it much better than you do that, driving a rented mule. This would be part of the value proposition that we provide. And rugby is a hard sport on pitches. And we believe that one of the things we can provide is volunteers, sweat equity. I can tell you that other clubs are doing the exact thing. They have in the spring, there's a cleanup day. In the fall, there's a cleanup day. And that's not something you're necessarily gonna get when all we have is a financial interaction or transaction between us and the city. And certainly things like cutting the fields, lining the fields, those kind of things, they'll be worked out in the SLA, certainly, but we certainly will take very good care of what is one of our most necessary resources. Mike, I'll let you talk about some of the case studies.
So there are several rugby football clubs around the province of Ontario, let alone the country, that have these kind of parks. All of them have very good relationships with the city. In the package that we left with you, in fact, in the middle section, notes from our land group, we actually put a case study there for Peterborough Pagans RC. We put that particular one in there because we thought that was probably the closest model to what we were anticipating with the city of Kingston. So in that instance, the city of Peterborough owned all the land, Peterborough Pagans owned the field house. It's a 50-year lease. The Pagans have first use of the park, and obviously Scottish use as well. The other thing that's important is we have gone and we have looked at those from a business perspective. And all of those clubs have very similar, very robust, very self-sustaining business models. And we have brought that model to Kingston. And then we have the added bonus, if you will, in Kingston of the unique potential as a sports tourism destination. Obviously, we're nicely between Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, all of which have booming rugby sport activity in addition to other sports. So there's a number to make. And the other one I offer to you is Oakville Crusaders RC, which in itself was a spin-off nearby Mississauga, Moose Club. When they started their own park, which was a 25-acre grant from the city of Oakville, they had 45 members. They had 800 members to pay. 500 of those are youth. Now, can we get that kind of growth? Maybe not, but I think if we're anything like the other clubs, we will grow like 2 or 3 times. So we have a couple hundred kids playing rugby football in Kingston now. Not I suppose. So that goes up to 600 or so, and then you're playing for 4 years. Is that all?
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it. We're going to move on now. There are no briefings, so we'll move ahead to business. And we'll begin with the Rideau Trail and Side Trail Loop on Urban KMP Trail. And the lead staff person, I believe, is Mr. Unsworth. So if you'd care to do your song and dance, and we'll ask questions and see if anybody wants to, in the public, wants to ask questions after that. Great. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. The Rideau Trail report that you see before you is a report recommending that the committee recommend that City Council endorse the promotion and use of the current Rideau Trail on the city lands that has been in place since 1971. And that committee recommend to council to endorse the use of the urban section of the KMP Trail, which we've been recently building, as a side loop to the Rideau Trail Association, again, for promotion and use. So the current Rideau Trail alignment that's promoted and used by Rideau Trail Association goes from Confederation Park along the waterfront up through the Trailhead Conservation Area, Little Cataraqui Creek, Valley Land System, and eventually merges with the KMP Trail near Sydenham Road and the 401. From that point onwards, it travels north into the rural area, partly on the KMP Trail and partly on private lands. Historically, the Rideau Trail has entered into handshake agreements with landowners to use their lands for trail purpose. With municipalities, or formal approvals haven't necessarily always been arrived at, and that's the case in Kingston. When asked some of the members of the Rideau Trail Association if they could recall whether there was ever formal or informal handshake agreements with members of either city staff or politicians in the past, it really sort of went back before the memory. So I think sometimes that these community uses on these open public lands, which are already pathway systems or utility corridors or sidewalks on public streets, it has been sort of an accepted practice to informally use them and promote them. But what we're recommending is that we apply sort of a set of basic terms and we formalize and we sort of celebrate, or we ask council to formalize and celebrate the endorsement of the Rideau Trail use and promotion. If you go to the Rideau Trail website, I was just speaking to the representative from Rideau Trail tonight and sort of admiring how advanced their website and promotion and activities and involvement have become compared to some of the days in the past where it was more of a grassroots experience. It's a world-class walking system. It's over 300 kilometers from Ottawa to Kingston, and it ties into a number of other major trail systems that go across the country. The people come from all over the world to use the trail, and that was part of the impetus to having the actual trailhead occur right down in Confed Park in the downtown sort of restaurant and hotel district. That followed after an initiative to get their trailhead in Ottawa right to the downtown core, and I think it was on National Capital Commission lands. So you can really go from downtown to downtown in the trail right now, and that makes it a very attractive kind of hiking destination. There would be no change to the practice of what the Rideau Trail has been doing for the last 40 years or 45 years, other than to just have some general terms of agreement between the Rideau Trail Association for council's endorsement, such as recognize that you're essentially ambassadors of the city and you govern yourself and you promote the Rideau Trail in a way that is consistent with city practices and policies. And then just that we have a formal agreement that there will be potential interruption of service, change of service levels, that the city doesn't have any responsibility to raise or lower service levels based on the usage of the facility, and that the Rideau Trail is not entitled to make improvements and shouldn't be doing that. And they don't do that right now. So it's really not changing the current practice. It's just kind of giving it a formal blessing, if you will. The Blue Loop, however, is the most exciting part of the proposal that came from the Rideau Trail Association. And the blue or side loop is essentially would be designated, again, just through promotion on their website and in their literature and through their usership, that it's an alternate loop that you could take essentially at the foot of the entire Rideau Trail system. And it would be essentially follow the current urban KMP trail that we've developed. And it would begin at Confederation Park, and it would sort of go up the Great Cat River in the Inner Harbor and then follow the urban path all the way around and ultimately arrive at Sydenham Road again, where you would be able to jump off and get back on the Rideau Trail, either heading north up the KMP or back down the Little Cat system. What's really exciting about this particular proposal is that even though the two trail systems exist currently, to have them promoted will bring usership up. It'll sort of be just one more volunteer group trying to make Kingston a better place. We see nothing but positive sort of spin-off coming from the initiative, just like the Rideau Trail works for the last 45 years in the informal core alignment that's along the Little Cat Creek. 23.7 kilometer loop would be resulting. Again, the loop is there. You can walk it right now. It doesn't change the infrastructure. It just promotes it. And Rideau Trail would be then able to sort of promote and draw attention to the fact that is in a city of this size, an urban loop of largely sort of pathway systems that go in through natural lands, as well as along the sidewalks and public streets, is quite rare for an urban core of this size. So a 23.7 kilometer urban walking loop, hiking loop, multi-use loop, it's really unusual. Even I was speaking quite candidly with the Rideau Trail Association a number of months ago that even in Toronto, there's Valleyland systems that are very extensive pathway systems through the Valleylands, but they're valleys or their systems, they're one-way trips, or you go up and you come back. And part of the thrill of a hiking experience is to not travel over the same territory twice or to complete or circumnavigate something. People sail around the world for this reason. So circumnavigation of the urban core or an urban loop is very, very unique for a city of our size. It's there, it doesn't need to be endorsed, but by endorsing that the Rideau Trail promote it as a side loop to their main trail system and encourage users to be on it, it can only add to the hopeful positive reception and usership of that new amenity. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions from the committee? Yes, Councillor McLaren.
Hi, as I'm sure you already know, I'm just going to remind you that there are a lot of people in the Grosvenor Court area and the Grenville Park area there who do not want any improvements on this. And I see that you mentioned you got some improvements in the capital budget already. I'm really hoping that those are not in that between Princess and Bath Road area. Is there any capital improvement plans in that area?
Our current work plan that is approved by budget, approved in the current budget, does not include those improvements that we've spoken about over the last year or so. I will say that in 2002, the council endorsed Cycling Pathways study, which then was endorsed into the official plan for 2 go-rounds now. does consider improvements all over the city, including those ones that we've spoken about. The Active Transportation Master Plan is also going to talk about improvements to pathway systems all around the city. If you want people to get out and use the pathway systems to get around the city, they have to be improved. But that is completely not connected to this report. The route does travel, the current Rideau Trail route does travel through those lands we've talked about up the Little Cat Creek, along that utility corridor. But if committee recommends that council endorse the Rideau Trail to do what it's been doing for all these years, it doesn't say anything about the other conversations that have to happen over the years about whether the city wants to change its assets or not. It just says to the Rideau Trail that you take it as it is and you be good ambassadors, and we celebrate your promotion of our asset. But it certainly does not lay any groundwork, or it wasn't intended to lay any groundwork towards the effect that you're referring to.
That's wonderful, and I very much like that bullet point that says no improvements may be made, and I hope that you communicate that to them, at least in that particular section.
But by the Rideau Trail Association.
Yes, by the Rideau, no improvements will be made to the trail route, and that, if I may communicate that in our plans to improve the trails throughout the entire city, I hope that you put that part there as the very last part and delay it as long as possible, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure that direction has come from council. So if a report came forward through this committee to council with a recommendation, it behooves us not to ask staff to do something, like delay something. There's a process to follow.
I did use the conditional tense and then the hope with specific purpose
That's
to those
fine.
words. Thank you.
That was a mild scold. So anybody else on the committee wish to? No? I just had one or two, so if the vice chair could take over.
I take the chair and I recognize you.
Thank you. I'm just curious. I know from walking my dog and my previous dog through the Marshlands Conservation Area, up along, from King Street up, that you come to a boardwalk section about halfway up there in the Marshlands that isn't, or at least wasn't the last time I was there, a passable link all the way up. But it appears in the map that you could walk from King Street all the way up and north of Princess Street. Is that boardwalk planned to be completed? And is that portion the Conservation Authority lands? So that would be on their dime, but it might come as an improvement charge back to the city. Is that accurate?
Mr. Unsworth?
The lands are the conservation-owned lands. The boardwalks were built by volunteers in the Rideau Trail Association and maintained over the years. They're at their life cycle, so they do need repair. The route is passable and is used regularly. It's an adventure, but those lands are on the Rideau Trail route. The hiking route goes across all different existing conditions, including some wet and boggy terrain, some perfectly manicured sidewalks, and all sorts of different scenarios from Kingston to Ottawa. There is often improvement grants that the Rideau Trail Association seeks out and to partner with the conservation area to sort of make mending to those lands, and I suspect we'll see some of that in the future. The only city involvement would be lined up with the Waterfront Master Plan that did identify this entire segment to be redeveloped into a more accessible space, and to address the issue of these large pieces of infrastructure that at some point will fail. The timeline for that is quite far out in the Waterfront Master Plan, but it's quite a significant commitment that council has already made to make to those improvements. but they're in the decades out kind of range.
Thank you, that's helpful. So I guess basically this is a remapping exercise and an opportunity to more thoroughly promote a linkage between the KMP and Rideau Trail. Is that accurate?
Certainly. And then the formal endorsement, I guess, just that this small community organization is really got the blessing of committee and council to be sort of promoting the use of the public lands that we're responsible for.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, I will get the chair back and then ask any other questions. Seeing none, are there any members of the public that wish to speak? I believe there's one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Donald Coulter, the past chair, which is a very important position, of the Rideau Trail Kingston Club. And I'm promoting this Blue Trail to give as Mr. Unsworth has said 2 or 3 times, an exciting, really exciting trail that circumvents, circumcises all of, I hate that expression, goes around all of the Kingston. There is no other city I know in Canada that would have this. It does have public trails. The Rideau Trail does not own any property. We use other people's property and landowners. We have handshake agreements with, the same with the conservation areas, the provincial parks, even Parks Canada. We wandered through Smith Falls, across the locks at least 3 times with Parks Canada's approval. So we don't own anything. All we do is use it. We do, in the more remote areas, maintain it by removing fallen branches and cutting up trees. We do put our markers on the trail, and we're proposing to put our blue markers on this trail in Kingston. And believe it or not, a lot of people can't read maps, but they can follow these blue markers who point the way of the trail. And we'll just put them, they will not be everywhere, but they'll be at places. And there are a number of places even now on the trail where it's slightly confused, for you to follow it. And you would be very pleased in the sections that the Parks Department has completed to see the usage, even on a Wednesday morning. It's very impressive. I even ran across Mr. Unsworth on the trail. But he was working, doing that wonderful job of landscaping that is very impressive. So we want to thank you for the opportunity to use the trail. All we will be doing is walking on the trail, but we would like to put up blue markers to help the public find their way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll go into committee session. There is a recommendation before us. If there's a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bone, Councillor Holland. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. And our next and final report is a report received from the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee, which I sat in on last week. It's an overflow shelter update and a Rideau Heights regeneration implementation plan, both with recommendations before us. So, Sheldon, I'm sorry, Director Laidman, the floor is yours.
Sure, thanks, Councillor Neal, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if I need to go into any particular detail about the reports. Certainly, as Councillor Neal mentioned, one of the more significant discussions the Housing Committee had, Housing and Homelessness Committee had last time was in front of them, the issue of overflow shelters. And the purpose of the report is certainly to couch this issue as an overflow shelter issue, not necessarily just Ryandale Shelter on its own, that we have taken the opportunity to evaluate the shelter system over the first 2 years of operation. We have seen a 17% reduction in overall shelter usage. We've seen particularly the time per stay go down so that they're now being used as emergency shelters instead of housing. We've seen upwards of 200 households housed from the shelters directly. So it has been rather significant. Council has offered funding for the last couple of years out of reserve funds and other funds to allow Ryandale Shelter to continue to operate, even though they were not one of the successful shelters in the main system. We've analyzed the shelter utilization, worked with their board, and I think there's a mutual understanding that the shelter numbers have come down significantly and that they don't need to operate as a shelter any longer. The funding given to the shelter by council through the budget last year ends in June of this year. What's in front of the committee is actually to allow Ryandale to use the funding to either transition to a new use or wrap up their operation because the original funding was very specific to just be used as a shelter. So that's what's in front of the committee. There was a large discussion at the committee about how the city would be dealing with any capacity issues if we don't have Ryandale. I think that's there's a number of things we're doing. We have purchased additional beds for overflow for the existing shelters. We are working on a policy to either use motel vouchers or possibly housing units on a temporary basis. Also working with our NAID. The one issue that I would like to bring to the attention of the committee is that we have noticed that at least 30%, almost 30% of all shelter users on any given night are from outside of Kingston and Frontenac. And that's more than one shelter's worth of people. So we will be trying to find out exactly where those people are coming from and working with our adjacent municipalities to try to determine why they're coming to Kingston and how we can keep them in their home city where they could be better served as well.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Councillor.
So this plan sounds a little bit like what we did with Dawn House. Is there any? Does there appear to be anything that they can do to repurpose to become self-sufficient?
Through you, Mr. Chair. They have, as a board, been looking at options along with United Way to see what they may want to do. It is very difficult to find a sustainable use right now, but they are pursuing those. The main one being to just offer transitional housing and partner with another agency where people may be being released from hospitals or other kind of situations and may not be appropriate to go right into housing but need some transition area. So they have been pursuing that, whether the city may be able to partner with them on rent supplements for those units under our normal programs. They also had a large visioning session with a lot of nonprofits who came to try to figure out if there would be viable alternatives. So I think they understand it would be a shame if the buildings themselves were lost to the system. And that's one of their primary focuses, to make sure the buildings stay in the system somehow.
Yes, it's my understanding the buildings they own 2 buildings. They're mortgage-free at this time. The one operates outside of the city funding envelope as transitional housing. And that may in fact be the route that they may be able to follow in future. So time will tell, I guess. So, any other questions? Could I ask the Vice Chair to take over?
Sure thing.
Thank you. I brought this up at a couple of meetings. First of all, I just want to say, yes, there are homeless people from away, but homelessness has always had a very large population of transients. That's by the very nature of homelessness. So, but clearly we don't want to be a magnet for homelessness, but nor do we want to, I think, say that because people don't have homeless means you don't have a residency. So they haven't been residents of Kingston, but they're transient, which is the nature of homelessness. So I guess that's a statistic worth noting, but I'm not sure where it necessarily would lead us to. I know that I've brought up at housing and homelessness meetings prior my concern that for all kinds of reasons, when we have a single, the major single intake facility is in from the cold, and so many of the people that are homeless are either on parole or probation or possibly have restraining orders not to be in contact with certain people who also are frequently homeless. That creates a difficult situation for somebody who either breaches their parole to get in out of the cold or that. And I know we haven't used, but we've had as an option motel vouchers. We will, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, we will indeed be more fully utilizing or accessing those when there's somebody, not just when it's all the beds are filled, but when somebody has a legitimate reason why they can't fill one of those beds. Can you comment on that and how that protocol will work?
Through you, Madam Chair. We have committed, first of all, Council has, in previous approvals, granted staff the ability to use some of the reserve fund for motel vouchers once that becomes a possibility. So Council's already approved that possibility. However, we've never had the policy in place to actually implement that yet. And we've committed to the Housing and Homelessness Committee to bring that policy forward to them. My only reservation with it, one of the concerns is that, like a magnet for homelessness in the region, I also don't want it advertised that come to Kingston and you can have a motel voucher. So it really needs to be sensitively determined how we can have a policy that can work, that it's not the last person in the shelter that's getting that motel voucher, it's the most appropriate person that might be the most appropriate to go to a hotel if we're facing capacity issues. There's a lot of issues that we need to work through but we have committed to do so, and we will bring a report to the Housing and Homelessness Committee at their next meeting, for sure.
Yeah, and if it's criteria-based, who gets the voucher? And I agree with you, it shouldn't just be the last one in, oops, we're out of beds, here's a voucher. Because then you'll have people hanging around the door waiting for it to fill up. So, but I know other cities utilize vouchers as a way, and as I understand it, the statistics that we received at the Housing and Homelessness Committee was that in the last little while, it's been costing us $200 and some for an overflow bed in a homeless shelter, when a motel voucher could be $65 or $70. So Okay, thank you very much. There is a recommendation before us. Moved, seconded, Bowman Osanic. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now onward and upward to Rideau Heights Regeneration Phase 2 Implementation Planning. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So, as many of you know, we've the Rideau Heights strategy that was approved by council has a number of phases to it, and we're in the midst of phase 1 right now, which saw the demolition of one of our most problematic social housing units, the redevelopment of the Rideau Heights Center that's being built right now, Shannon Park redevelopment, a new road through Shannon Park, and we have the planning approvals approved to be able to sell the excess land for market housing in there. So that's phase 1. So we're kind of partway through that. And so we'd like to move to phase 2 of the plan. And one of the things we've looked at and presented this to the Housing Committee, we looked at minor tweaks to the plan to try to make it more viable from the major overall plan, which is part of the report. But essentially, we now want to focus on the area around Headway Park, which is all owned by Kingston Frontenac Housing Corp., and that will involve a new road through the park to make it more safe, new private lanes to provide frontage to the housing units, and new lanes around Headway Park to make it more safe and eyes on the park to meet today's standards. So in order to do that, we do need to undertake a large planning process by which we would do the planning, all the zoning approvals, official plan approvals, and site plan approvals, so that when funding becomes available and when KFHC looks through their business planning themselves, we can be ready to start constructing the new apartment buildings and townhouses in that neighborhood as well.
Great, thank you. Yes, Councillor Holland, I figured you'd have some questions.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to see this come before us. My question really is mostly about, okay, I guess 2 questions regarding the roads. And I think I'm delighted to see that this phase in Headway Park, I mean, so much is happening in around the Shannon Park area at this point, and then this part is so, it seemed like it was so far off initially, so the fact that it's getting ready is very exciting. Though when we had the consultations with the public, the concerns around the roads, both the Macaulay Street extension and the new Headway Park Road, were of course for people to try to wrap their heads around a road in which in an area where it's currently people don't pass through it with cars. And of course, the logic of eyes on the street and all that is really, really sound. It's just that I'm curious because people were mostly just looking at the alternative road alignment, which is essentially completely straight as opposed to the original proposal for the road. And some of the concerns about traffic in those consultations were alleviated when we talked about the curvature of the road and the fact that cars wouldn't pass through that quickly because of that curve. So just wondering if you can speak to any potential traffic restrictions or the safety issues surrounding this new route.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly that will be part of the overall planning approvals, to have a traffic engineer, just like any large development that a private developer would be proposing, because the new road does require to go through the full EA process as part of the new subdivision plan. And as part of that, they will be looking at traffic safety concerns, whether it's bulb outs, whether it's other traffic safety concerns like the speed humps that the city's been putting in on or whether the curvature of the road is appropriate at all. The only reason we've proposed that right now is on our basic analysis at staff level is that saves some townhouse units from needing to be demolished, allows the park to be slightly bigger and not lose park space. So that seemed to be an adequate balance for us. But if the traffic consultant, as part of the subdivision plan, looks at it and feels that it's not appropriate, that'll be determined through that process.
Okay, thanks. Just another question, just to make sure I'm totally clear with my maps here, because I'm not very good. I need those little flags to guide me when I'm walking. This route, regardless of or I guess really where you enter off Compton, is at this point a sort of an extended private laneway that goes through the green space. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Right now, it appears like a fire lane, more or less. I think that was the original purpose. So that would be upgraded to a road.
Or some people call it a dirt bike racing strip, but anyway, yeah, exactly. So, okay, and so therefore, the, what is currently, when people are looking at their back, the backs or fronts of the unit, a strip that had a somewhat hazardous type of transportation will be transformed into a street with a walkway along it as well, I take it, a sidewalk of some kind?
Yeah, it'll be the normal standard that the city would be having, with sidewalk, landscaping, proper traffic control, all those kind of things. And it would be slightly, I think, slightly north of where the existing fire lane is, because actually we're trying to fit in some new housing actually south of it as well. So it would be slightly closer to the units on the north of it right now.
Okay, thanks. And then just finally, the loss of the apartment units, which I'm on KFHC board, and I guess it's, in reading the report, it seems as though that's not a substantial loss, and that can be, the market units can be, there can be another way for KFHC to move forward with that overall plan. I'm just wondering about, I guess if you could maybe speak to the rationale, whether it's KFHC's or the city's, as far as, is it seen as that like density, that the density of that build was something that didn't fit with the new vision for this area? Because that's kind of what I picked up on.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the one area that in the northeast quadrant of which is where one of the apartments has been removed, I think it's concerned that typically you want mid-density or higher density on arterial type roads, and that's the furthest part of that neighborhood from Weller, area. So you're getting more and more into a normal or a more regularized subdivision situation, right, with townhouses and houses, and that possibly that's not the best location for the higher density. It should be closer to Weller or another location. Also, the area north of Compton there, where the old Oakwood is, will become market housing, and we want to be concerned about the marketability of that lot too, and we don't want to add too much density.
Thank you. Any further questions? In some of I just had the one question, so I won't give up the chair. Are some of the rebuild going to be mixed affordable, so there'll be both market and affordable units, subsidized units in the same building, in the same property?
100%, yes. That's the overall intention, and we still have the goal of having 100 RGI units moved out of that neighborhood overall. So we'll be taking the total down, as well as new builds will be a mixture, just like the Brock Street proposal or the one on Cliff Street, so that the units themselves are financially viable for more sustainable.
Thank you very much. And not seeing any members of the public, I will call for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Howland, Councillor Bohm. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Again, we're a unanimous group tonight. That's good. So are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Other business? Seeing none. Correspondence? I don't believe we have any. Date and time of next meeting, April 27th at 6 p.m. We shall see you all then. Move to adjourn. Councillor Bohm, quick on the draw. Councillor Holland, all those in favor? Carried.